All right, well, good morning. Welcome to UCEA's YouTube Live. This is Scott Richardson, a graduate research assistant and doctoral student at UCEA headquarters at the University of Virginia. I'm here today to interview Dr. David DeMatthews as part of his candidacy for the UCEA Executive Committee. Today, listeners will be hearing from Dr. DeMatthews. David's research is focused on issues related to K-12 school leadership and the equitable and inclusive practices that contribute to student success. Welcome, Dr. DeMatthews.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us. Let's begin with the first question. Please tell us about your background and your scholarship as it relates to leadership preparation and practice.
Okay. I started my career as a public school teacher. I've also served as the school administrator and also at the district level in the area of special education prior to um, entering into higher education. And since becoming an assistant professor and now an associate professor, UCA has really been a critical organization for me. And I really do see UCA as my home, particularly because my research has been focused on how district and school leaders create high quality, inclusive schools for all students, but with a particular focus on students and families that have been traditionally marginalized. So this research has allowed me to work and learn from principals, assistant principals, superintendents, teachers, and families, and students in multiple urban and rural school districts in the United States, but also in Mexico, Colombia, and Brazil. I really care a lot about impacting professional development and preparation too. And so while I'm passionate about my research in public schools. I really entered into this space and want to continue my role in the field and working with UCA to inform the way that we prepare graduate students to be researchers, to be school leaders, to be district leaders in the field.
All right, very good. Thank you for sharing that. You've served for several years as a plenary session representative. Tell us about your engagement in UCEA's governance.
Sure. So I actually had the unique opportunity to serve as a plenum session representative at two universities, first at the University of Texas at El Paso, where I worked, and now at UT Austin.
Right.
And so while at UT, so both institutions that they have a lot of similarities, but they also have some differences. So while at UT El Paso, I really wanted to emphasize the importance of UCA collaborating and thinking deeply about student needs in a Hispanic serving institution. So some of our students at UT El Paso kind of felt like outsiders, and that they weren't able to kind of be as engaged as they wanted to be. And so one of the things that I really took seriously, especially as plenum there, was working with UCA leadership to think about how students who are not maybe at the traditional R1 schools that may lack some of the same resources, same networks, how can we ensure that those types of institutions and those students are also engaged and involved? Since being at UT over the past year and a half now, I've tried to continue that advocacy and continue to partner with my colleagues at UT El Paso. But I've also been advocating as a member of the plenum for us to plan and engage more with professional organizations like the National Association of Secondary School Principals, the Council for Exceptional Children, American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, because I think connections with these like-minded organizations who recognize how critical school and district leadership is, I think that's really important for us kind of moving forward and making sure that UCA remains kind of focused on addressing those problems of practice, developing leadership and policy that supports effective schools, and then also advancing equity in our schools and in our institutions of higher education.
Right. Well, you've clearly already been engaged in UCEA a long time, and in many ways, but are there any other ways that you have been engaged in UCEA that you'd like to discuss?
Sure. There's a few other things that have really been instrumental in kind of my own development as a scholar that have been directly kind of facilitated by UCA. And so I've served as the liaison for UCA with the Cedar Center at the University of Florida. And this is a critical partnership for us, I think, because CEDAR's focus is on working with state departments of education and institutes of higher education to improve the preparation of teachers and leaders, with a special emphasis on students with disabilities. So in this role as a liaison, I've been able to attract some of special education and teacher education's leading researchers and scholars to UCA conferences, hold special sessions focused on best practices in inclusive schools, and then also through my work with CEDAR, I've been able to visit UCA member institutions and non-member institutions to support with program development. Also through UCA, I was appointed to serve on the National Educational Leadership Preparation Standards Committee in collaboration with the Council of Chief State School Officers. And so this was the committee that helped to develop the NELP standards for school and district leaders.
Right.
And then I've served on some awards committees. So the Jack Culbertson Award, the William Davis Award, and the Paula Silver Awards have been committees that I've served on. I've also served on two UCA journals, editorial boards, and then just been really active with some of the SIGs that are obviously connected to AERA and Division A, but intricately connected into mentoring UCA graduate students and early career faculty.
All right. Well, now if you could go a little more in depth in discussing with us how your scholarship, research, teaching, and or your service, how specifically can that inform the work of UCEA, particularly the work of the executive committee?
Okay, well, so I see my scholarship, the research projects I've been engaged in, my teaching and my service as deeply connected to each other and also to the mission of UCA and the EC. So, for example, I've been studying how school leaders create and sustain inclusive schools in Texas for the past 6 years. But in that time, I've also seen principals who are doing amazing work experiencing high levels of burnout, which has impacted the way that I'm thinking about my research. And relatedly, I've worked kind of to change the way that I teach, to incorporate mindfulness and self-care into our coursework, into engaging in program design with our district partners to reduce burnout, to look at issues of principal turnover. And so I think this is a critical area of advocacy for the UCA Executive Committee and for UCA programs in general to be focused on. So the National Association for Counselors in Education, they actually have a self-care standard, which basically works on this principle that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of other people. And so I think what I've learned through my scholarship and through teaching is that we need to make sure that the leaders that we're preparing or the faculty that we're preparing have the skills and the mindfulness and the self-care experience in order to sustain on the job, because creating more equitable schools, it can be extremely, extremely challenging.
Sure.
I've also seen that while UCA has taken great strides to diversify faculty and doctoral students in the ranks, I think we need to continue to recruit and mentor people of color, and especially women of color, interested in school leadership positions, district leadership positions, and faculty roles. This is a pressing problem in Texas, but I also think it's a problem across the country. So as a Jackson Scholars Mentor, in my role as a director of a program at UT, and in a variety of other roles, I've really tried to work hard on recruiting and supporting students from diverse backgrounds. And I think I'd be really excited about continuing that work at the EC level if that opportunity presented itself. And then just connected to that, one last thing, I also think, so my background in special ed as a former school and district administrator, and now as somebody who has been working in the area of dual language education, it's also provided me with opportunity and something that I'd like to push UCA to continue to be more interdisciplinary, to consider the diverse needs of culturally and linguistically diverse students, and to collaborate with scholars, not just within our field, but more broadly in colleges of education and even in outside disciplines.
All right, well, thank you for all of that. The last question I have for you is just a bit more of a personal one, but we're curious as to just the reasons why you have chosen to run for the executive committee and your vision for the future of UCEA.
Sure. So I've chosen to run for the EC because UCA is really my professional home. I started as an assistant professor and I was coming right out of a practitioner role. I didn't have publications. I had never presented at an academic conference, and I didn't really know what I really needed to do to be successful in higher education. I had an advisor who served on the EC, Hannah Mohini, but she passed away early uh, in my assistant professorship. And so immediately my UCA colleagues and folks from at all career stages from all types of UCA institutions provided me with encouragement, support, mentoring, and fellowship. And so the first, I'd say, critical reason for why I want to serve on the EC is because I want to pass on those investments that have been made into me to the next generation of UCA graduate students, to early career scholars, and just the general work that's happening in UCA. Secondly, I think a vision for the future. I think there are some important opportunities to build and rebuild bridges across our field to have a stronger impact on policy. I think there are some emerging ways where qualitative and quantitative researchers from diverse perspectives, epistemologies, and methodological approaches can collaborate, wrestle with complex challenges in schools and districts, and engage in creative work that better describes successes and challenges confronting public education, and then offers more complete and innovative policies, practices, and responses. And so I think UCA is already doing a great job of this, and I'm really excited about being able to further advance that work. And then finally, as I previously noted, I see UCA continuing to build on their partnerships and incorporating the voices of practitioners, students, community organizations that engage with leadership and families. And I think that by drawing from the strengths of our partner organizations, we can advance our equity agenda and also develop new pedagogies and new practices for leadership development. So I'd like to kind of continue this type of interdisciplinary and community-based work at the national level. So just kind of in sum, to wrap it up, UCA really has been a key institution in my development as a professional, as a scholar, and I really do see it as my home. And I'm so excited about this opportunity to further advance the mission of UCEA.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time and your thoughtful responses, Dr. DeMatthews.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, this interview will be archived on the UCEA YouTube channel. Listeners can access or share this interview at any time. We also encourage listeners to post comments and questions on this interview in the comments section. Thank you, Dr. DeMatthews, and have a great day.
Thank you. You too.